Welcome to the Sports Spectrum Podcast, where faith and sports collide. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Spectrum Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Romano. It is wonderful to have you joining us here on the program today from wherever you are tuning in, whether it's iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, somewhere on your mobile device. We appreciate you subscribing and clicking that little podcast icon on your phone and subscribing and never missing an episode of the Sports Spectrum Podcast. You can also hear us on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. Just search Sports Spectrum. And you can also find every single piece of content, including every podcast, over at sportspectrum.com. Today's guests are Jake and Janie Reed, husband and wife. And we got a chance to sit down with Jake and Janie back in December, late November of 2017. And we're airing this now because it's spring training time. And Jake Reed is a pitcher with the Minnesota Twins. Now, Jake was drafted in the 5th round of the 2014 MLB amateur draft by the Minnesota Twins. And he's been making his trek through the minor leagues as a prospect usually does, pitching in single A, double A, rookie ball. And then as recently as last year, pitching in triple A with Rochester in the International League. And he had a 2.05 ERA in 22 games and had 5 saves and looked very good on the mound. And that's transferred over in 2018 in spring training, where he's trying to earn a spot on the major league roster for the Minnesota Twins as a pitcher. And through his first 4 games in spring training, he allowed 0 runs and 5 strikeouts. So 0 runs, 5 strikeouts, and Jake Reed is solidifying himself as a possible candidate to make the major league roster, or at the very least, see his major league debut take place in 2018. He was a pitcher at the University of Oregon, which is where he met his wife, Janie, the former Janie Takata, now Janie Reed, and they started dating and then eventually got married. And when we sat down and talked with them, they had just come off of their wedding. Like within a few days of getting married, they sat down with myself and did this podcast taping. And Janie is an athlete in her own right. So Jake's wife, Janie, is a member of Team USA as a softball player, and she played and competed at the World Cup of Softball in 2017 and is hoping to be a member of the team that makes its debut and comes back to the Olympics in 2020. So this is an athletic couple here, a husband and a wife who are both involved at the highest level in professional sports and as members of their respective teams, both the Twins in baseball and Janie's playing for Team USA in softball. And Janie also played her softball and her college ball at Oregon as well. I think you guys will really like this discussion. This is a conversation with a very young couple in their early 20s who are just on the cusp of sort of taking that next level, taking that next step in their professional lives, both as potentially making the Olympics for Janie and then playing in the major leagues for Jake, but also new steps in their faith and coming together as husband and wife. And we talked to them at a conference, very similar to a few of the other guests that we've had on at a recent Christian conference, where a bunch of baseball players and their wives come together and hear the word, kind of dive in and having really wonderful moments of encountering the Lord in a powerful way. And Jake was actually saved at one of these conferences, and he'll tell you that story. So enjoy this podcast. Jake and Janie Reed. Jake Reed, Minnesota Twins pitcher. Janie Reed, Team USA softball player. Really like these guys. I hope you will too. Here's their story on the Sports Spectrum Podcast. It's my pleasure to welcome Jake and Janie Reed. And you chuckle because you guys just got married. You've been married, what, like two weeks now, basically?
Not even.
Like a week and a half.
Week and a half? How's it been going? How's the marriage life going so far?
It's been going good. We've been super busy, just kind of bouncing around between hotels, and we went to Disneyland after and spent a day there, and then obviously we're here now, and it's been a really busy off season thus far with planning and everything, and but it's been great so far.
And you're both athletes, so are you training too and trying to work that into the picture as well, Janie?
Yeah, we've kind of been slacking a little bit this week, but we actually train with the same trainer.
Okay.
He started training me when I was in high school, and then all through college when I would come home for breaks, and then he actually moved down to San Diego from Orange County and now trains Jake. So now we get to go together, which is really cool, and train together. And sometimes Jake will pitch me front toss. I can't really catch him though, so sorry, but yeah.
So that's got to be, do you do similar drills in some ways? You're a right fielder or an outfielder, right?
Yeah, mainly left.
Left fielder, okay.
Yeah.
And you're a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do similar drills at all anyway, even though you're different positions, or are you literally doing completely different things?
Our workouts are kind of specified for each person.
Okay.
Just kind of like what they need to work on, and like very individualized. And so for a guy like me, I lose a lot of weight and strength during the season, and so my workout is kind of designed to put that weight back on and get stronger and maintain my flexibility. Whereas she, she's an outfielder. She can run, she can steal bases, and so a lot of her workouts are, strength as well. But I would say a large part of her workouts are speed and agility and really kind of quick twitch type of things that can help her with beating the ball out or stealing a base. So, but like warming up and stuff together, a lot of that stuff is together. But then once we actually start working out, it's split up, which is great because it could be kind of distracting at times.
I was going to say, it's like living at home. You need to be together a lot, but you also need your space,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's good. Now, I was talking to Kyle Gibson of the Twins, and as a Major League pitcher, I asked him, I said, when's the last time you threw a baseball? And he said, my last start, late September. I said, late September? I said, when's the next time you're going to pick up a baseball and throw? He's like, maybe early January. That just blew me away as a pitcher that you would not even throw a baseball for 3 or 4 months. Is that kind of the same regimen for you? Or is it different for other pitchers?
It's different, I think, from guy to guy. A guy like Kyle's been around for a while. He knows exactly what his body needs to be prepared for spring training. And a guy like me, I missed the first 2 months of last season with a lat strain. And so I kind of figured that I could afford to start throwing a little earlier this offseason to work on some things, some much needed things, I think, to help me get back on track. And so I decided that I was going to start throwing. I normally start throwing December 1st. But this year I decided to start going on November 1st just because I have those extra months to work with and, not rushing into anything, just, making sure that you kind of ease your way into it. But I definitely want to make sure that I have more time this offseason to get off the mound.
Being a husband and wife, both athletes, how's that dynamic going to work? You're both elite athletes, USA softball, Major League Baseball soon, Minnesota Twins organization. How's that dynamic going to work in the household? Because opposites attract, they say. My wife has no interest in sports, and I love sports, so we kind of make that work. But you guys are kind of, cut from the same cloth a little bit as athletes. How's that dynamic going?
I think a lot of times it helps because we're out of college where you're forced to work out this time on these days. So I know for me, like, I don't have teammates around for them to push me and me to push them. So it helps. Sometimes I wake up and I don't want to go train. Most days I wake up and I say I don't want to go train, but I'm getting in the car with Jake and we're going to go drive and lift and run. So I think it helps, and also we're both like-minded in playing our sports on mission. So it kind of helps to be in that together as well, because we kind of know exactly what each other goes through. I mean, his season is way longer than mine, so I don't really understand that side of it. But as far as the purpose and the intention behind why we play and what the fields mean to us is great, in my opinion.
Yeah, Jake, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there are days, like she said, where she doesn't want to get up and go.
There's never days for you, though?
There are some days,
really,
I guess.
Rarely.
But no, I would agree with that. I think it helps. Obviously the schedules are conflicting right now, and that's tough, not being together. But she understands my lifestyle, and I understand hers. the travel, the failure that comes along with the game. And I think her and I have really gotten on the same page lately about just really loosening our grip on the games itself, and understanding that, we're going to be okay when it comes to an end, whenever it does. And so to kind of have that same mindset about it, that it's not just all about baseball and it's not just all about softball, but there's, something bigger going on. And that's, I think, kind of been liberating for us, just knowing that whatever happens with my career and whatever happens with her career is ordained, and that we're going to be okay with it. And so that, in that aspect, it's been very, it's been a lot of fun, to have that support, because you don't tend to have that support from a lot of people. I'd say not from your parents. They're kind of, they might want to they want me to get to the big leagues more than I want to get to the big leagues, and
sure.
her parents might want her to get to the Olympics and win a gold medal more than she does. And so,
right.
For us to be on the same team as far as that mindset of just being willing to accept whatever happens in our sports has been awesome.
That's great. Now, how about we go back to when you guys first met? Now, you both went to the University of Oregon and Eugene, Oregon, and again, playing softball, playing baseball. Let's go back, Janie, and take me to that first time that you met Jake Reed. Or can you share that story?
No, I don't really remember the very first time, but we had morning weights at the same time baseball and softball did, and then we had a class. It was like an all-athlete class, like Easy A class, that we had together too. And so we'd kind of and he added me on Facebook. So
oh, that's big. Then
I would always be like, that's Jake Reed over there in the weight room. So that's kind of how we got familiar with each other, and then baseball and softball kind of started hanging out the freshman class. So
okay,
that's how we kind of.
So you met freshman year.
Yeah,
okay,
right off the bat.
All right. So how long was it before you guys started getting serious, dating, kind of thinking, okay, this might be something we want to pursue?
It took a little while. We just come from such different backgrounds, and we're just in such different places in our freshman year. And I think for her, that she had never had a boyfriend before, and for me, I had a lot of girlfriends growing up, and so we were just in completely different places. And I think, we started hanging out, like she said, just kind of our teams, and I was very attracted to her, obviously, to her personality as well. There was just some things that I noticed about her that were different, and I could tell. And so we started hanging out, and I think we really started developing a friendship. Just hanging out together on the weekends, and just doing things together, and going through our freshman year together. We had a lot of the same classes, and just beginning to be more familiar with each other, just through life. And that was essentially how it all started. And then I think we kind of knew that we had something going on, but obviously we weren't trying to rush anything. And me and one of my roommates were going up to a football game at Washington, and he lived up in Seattle.
Okay.
And so it was him and his girlfriend, and he invited me, and he's like, invite somebody. And so I ended up inviting her. And
so kind of the first date?
Yeah, that was kind of our first date, and
okay.
It was cool because it was like a retreat, and it was just her and I together, and my buddy and his girlfriend together, and we had just an awesome weekend, getting to know each other a lot better, and just had a lot of laughs, and had a great time. And that was kind of I guess you could say the spark that weekend.
That was early November.
Mm-hmm. Early November.
Of freshman year.
Yeah.
And here we are in 2017, and you're just married. That's pretty cool. We're talking to Jake and Janie Reed here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Now, Janie, where's faith for you in this? Where's your faith in Christ kind of take shape for you? When does that start for you?
It started, I grew up in the church. My parents met at the church that I grew up in. But softball definitely came first in our family. I have two older sisters, and we all played softball. My dad played baseball. And so, but my mom did a really good job at getting us to church and making it a priority, which I'm so grateful for now. But at the time, like, I was falling asleep on Saturday night after playing 3 games in my uniform, like ready to go to bed. But so glad that she got us there. But I think that my relationship with God, I look back in journals and like it was always like when I needed him, I would like write to him or something. But I think a personal relationship really sparked after my sophomore year in college.
Now, what was the moment? What was it that happened there? Was it a person? Was it a sermon you heard? What was that moment?
There's a few things that happened. I really see like this story. I kind of forgot about what had happened, but God, like I see like God's provision in it. I was in a journalism class and I had to do a story on someone who had had a turning point in their life, and someone was like, you should talk to the chaplain, Tony Overstake. And I was like, okay. And I hadn't gone to chapel, hadn't gone to FCA or anything. And so I asked to like meet with him. And now looking back, I'm like, that's crazy, you know, that like I don't even know who told me. And so I just emailed him and asked him if he could like meet for coffee. And he's probably looking at it like a crazy cool ministry opportunity. So I ended up talking with him, and then I had to get pictures for my story. So then I ended up going to FCA with him one night, like sophomore year, and taking pictures. And then we were going to leave like right after I was done, but then we ended up staying. So that was like kind of the first time I had attended FCA, which ended up being like a good community for me. But I think what brought me to my knees was that it was like year 2 or year 1 of us dating or something.
Year 2.
Started dating freshman year, so this was like the end of sophomore year, and like I never really thought about identity, like what it meant to have your identity in different things in God. I never thought about it, but at the time my identity had been in my relationship with Jake and softball, and it was like my best year in softball, breakout year. My freshman year average, started as a freshman, bottom of the lineup, like did okay. And then my sophomore year just went off and became an All-American. But that I specifically remember finding out that I had become an All-American, and our relationship was not going well, and I was just like so empty, like just like started crying. Like this was something I had worked for all my life, and the fact that I had made it to that point and it didn't give me any worth, and it didn't fill me up at all, was just like, holy cow, I don't know what to do now. So I kind of just randomly opened my Bible and started reading, and that's why I'm so thankful that my mom made it a priority, because I could have ran the other way, and I decided to run towards Jesus because I just knew that was the best direction to go at that time.
And there was a familiarity there, probably, having gone to church, to at least recognize some of what the word was saying.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Jake, what about you?
So I kind of had the opposite. I grew up in a pretty broken home. Didn't grow up going to church. I was at a really just tough age when everything was happening too. It was right before I was going into high school, and just it was a tough few years. But baseball and that lifestyle was just kind of the thing I ran to.
Yeah. Great distraction.
Yeah, great distraction.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't grow up with it. I really had no interest and had no idea about anything about the gospel or about Jesus, about the cross, about anything. And then went to college, and I met Janie. And I knew that, something was different about her, and we talked about some things here and there before, and I may have even tried to fake it just to get the girl, a little bit, which obviously looking back is horrible, but we would go to church every now and then together. There was a church right down the street from my apartment that we'd walk to on Sundays sometimes, and it wasn't real for me, at least. It may have been for her, but it definitely wasn't real for me. And that kind of transformation in my life didn't really happen until a couple years into my professional career, where things really started to change.
So you get drafted by the Minnesota Twins. That's a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Take us to that moment. How cool was that?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
My parents came up for the weekend, and I had worked really, really hard that summer leading into my junior year. I was supposed to go to the Cape, and I took it off, and I got to Oregon my freshman year at 180 pounds. I left my sophomore year for that summer at 180 pounds, and so went home that summer and just worked my butt off and worked hard, and it paid off, and the velocity increased, and I saw a lot of dividends from that hard work. And so when that moment came and your name gets called and your agent's starting to text you about a potential team that's about to take you, you just lock in even more to the computer. And then when your name gets called, I could just kind of lost control of my body and just lifted my hands in the air and just hugged my parents, and it was awesome. It was a really great moment.
So you get to the major leagues. Janie, you're supporting them, obviously. You're with them. You guys are still going together. But your faith still isn't quite there yet, Jake. So what moment is that for you when all of a sudden, okay, I'm a professional baseball pitcher now. I'm in the Twins organization, but something's still not right, and God still needs to get a hold of you. When does that happen?
So, man, I think a lot of it obviously had to do with Janie. We had a really rough relationship, and when we started dating my freshman year, I really pulled her in my direction into the lifestyle I was living. So consequently, we made a lot of decisions that young couples make in college that they don't know at the time.
Sure.
And so I really pulled her in my direction, and that was the worst possible direction to go. At that point in my life, I was struggling with a lot of things in college. I thought I was in an awesome relationship, and I really cared about this girl, but things weren't going well, just a lot of because the decisions I was making, I wasn't responsible, and really, really struggled in college with faithfulness to her, and she had no idea at that time, obviously. Got drafted, and we even broke up for a little while. My junior year, our junior year, we weren't together, but I kept her at arm's reach, which again, looking back, is horrible. But I thank God for it every day that somehow that she stayed in my life during that time. And just when I got drafted, we ended up getting back together, and I just thought at some point in my life that I was going to be able to snap my fingers and turn things around and change and grow up and become a man. And I realized pretty quickly after we got together that wasn't the case. I continued to struggle with things that, obviously, looking back now, I wish I wouldn't have, and just a lot of pain and a lot of hurt came out of it. But really, the struggles in baseball, my first year of pro ball, I did really, really well, and I got drafted. I went to the fall league my first summer. I got drafted, pitched really well at the fall league. The next year, it's my first full season. I start in Double-A and just get crushed. And it was a whole season of just being miserable because I had no idea how to handle it, and it never happened before, consistently. It had been, I'd had bad outings and bad starts before in my career, but not for an entire season over an extended amount of time. And so I was just miserable, maybe even a little bit depressed. And then kind of the end of the year started going better. I had started kind of reading the Bible a little that first year of struggle, but it was just for kind of comfort and solstice in the midst of that struggle. And then the end of the year went great, went back to the fall league, pitched really great, and then just kind of forgot about it and just went back to my old lifestyle. The next year, the same thing started happening. And with her help, she had always been on top of, she was just very gentle and very patient with me, leading me spiritually. She tried and have conversations and try and bring things up, and I was never really interested, and she stuck with it. And I think with that, and she's praying for me. She had other people praying for me, and she got me my first Bible. and her coach at the time that she was coaching under at Biola University in LA, she gave her a book to give to me too. And so I started reading this book, and it was just really helpful with some of the things that I was going through in baseball, and it was really helpful a lot of things I was going through spiritually.
What was the book? Do you know?
It was called A Better Way to Think, and I don't know the author, but it was kind of like John Gordon's books, like very subtle spiritualness, so it wasn't like super overbearing, but it was something that he could like comprehend where he was at.
It's really great. That's cool.
Yeah, and so I started reading that, and then I started getting into the New Testament. You know, when I first started trying to read the Bible, I started to try and read it from the beginning,
from Genesis,
and I just got stuck. You know,
yeah.
So I started reading Matthew, and I just remember that the things that I was reading in this book and the things that I was reading in the Bible were just kind of aligning in a weird, creepy way. And I just remember like sitting there in Chattanooga, just like kind of starting to realize like, all right, something might be going on here. And it was just a very, I just remember praying, you know, kind of for the first time and it being real. I don't think I prayed a certain prayer. I can't remember what I said, but I just knew I finally had that feeling of I can't do this. I can't stop this lifestyle that I've been living my whole life by myself. I need help. I need help stopping these things, and because, like I said, I couldn't do it myself, and so my heart and my desires started to change, which was the thing that really locked me in and into my faith. Was that when those things started to change and the desires that I used to have started to go away, that's when her and I's relationship started to improve. And little did I know, she came out and visited me a little earlier that season, and you know, she tried to have a talk with me, and I was just like, I don't know if this is ever gonna happen. You know, I don't know if I'm gonna. I don't feel like I'm the kind of person that's gonna be able to have these deep conversations about Jesus with you. And she went home, and not in an ultimatum way, but you know, she finally surrendered our relationship over to Jesus, and just let go of it. She'd been trying so long and holding on so tightly to it. But really, when she let that go and finally just surrendered it and said, you know what, God, if you want to change this man's heart and you want us to be together, great. If not, get me out of this situation. And I think shortly after that is when I started reading and things started changing rapidly, you know.
And that's not that long ago. That's 2015, right?
Yep.
So Janie, I know you're chuckling here. I got to ask you, because my relationship with my wife actually was the reverse, and I was the first person to become a Christian, and then my wife took her a few more years. So I can probably relate with you more, ironically, but tell me about, from your perspective, what that was like. That had to be hard, I would imagine, to continue to love someone, continue to support them, want to be with them, but also be kind of like, all right, God, what's going on here? Why isn't he coming around?
Yeah.
You know, talk about that.
I think when we got back together in the fall of my senior year, like he had kind of been saying the things that I'd wanted him to say for a while, like as far as kind of being interested in his relationship with God, but like, it wasn't real for him.
Right.
But I think I just wanted it so badly. Like I could never put my finger on why I still liked him.
Yeah, no. Why am I still with this guy?
Yeah, so like the fact that I saw him like start to like be more interested in his faith, I was like, okay, like I'll get back together with him.
Yeah.
And it was like pretty good for a little bit, but like he started to struggle and started to like distance himself. And I remember like we had been dating for a year again, and I one night like asked him like, would you marry me right now? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, I wouldn't marry you right now, and I don't know why. Like I knew something was missing, because I had never really seen like a good picture of like a Christian relationship, so I was kind of just trying to like manifest it myself. And then I started working at Biola, and that really opened my eyes, because for the first time I had a mentor speaking into my life. And then we had started reading, I don't know if you've read The Circle Maker.
Yeah, Mark Batterson.
Yeah, so
Sure.
we started reading that book, and I was like, I need to circle this. Like, this is, like, I have been just so back and forth with Jake for so many years, and, like, it was so clear I need to be in a relationship with a godly man, and that's what God wants for me. And I've been trying to be his God for so long, trying to save him, trying to be Jesus. And I was just got to a point after that conversation in Chattanooga where I realized I can't change another human. I'm not God, and that's a really good news. And so finally I decided I'm not going to make a decision. I'm not going to, try and figure out, should I break up with him? Should I stay with him? What should I do? Because I had been going back and forth. That conversation had been going back and forth in my mind for so long, and it wasn't working. And so I decided to surrender it to God. I said, I just prayed over and over again, God, make yourself the center of our relationship or break us up. Mm-hmm. And even one of my Christian friends was like, that might be a little, like, drastic.
It's a little dangerous to pray that.
Like, yeah. I'm ready. And that's when God was finally like, okay, like, I can work now because I wanted him, for the first time, I wanted him more than I wanted our relationship. I didn't even want his salvation for my sake. I was just like, even if he becomes a Christian and you don't want us together, that's fine. Like, I was finally at the end of that. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So, you guys were taping this late November, early December. You've literally been married just a few weeks, but I'm curious for you, Jake, as you become sort of solid in your faith, you guys sort of equally yoked, if you will, and believers in Jesus. What kind of discipleship, maybe some counseling mentors did you have over this last year, we'll say, to prepare yourself for marriage? Because like you said, you really never saw a Christian relationship. You grew up in a broken home. What kind of mentorship or discipleship did you go through?
Well, I had been mentored by my boss at Biola for 2 years.
Right.
Leading up to us getting engaged. And I think she had a lot to do with, the healing that we went through, because before having her as a mentor, I was never really good at letting people know what was, like, really going on in my life. Yeah. Like, people kind of had this idea of what Janie Takeda's life was like, and it wasn't real. And so for the first time, I just told her everything. I told her all the mess, and she really helped to just point me to Jesus and to just be praying for us, and taught me the power of prayer and the importance of prayer and covering us in prayer. And so I think that was really powerful for us, because we decided, I know there's a chunk of the story kind of missing, but we came to a point where we decided we're both going to run after Jesus, and if that brings us together, it brings us together, and if it leads us apart, it leads us apart, but at least we'll know what God wants for our lives.
Right.
So when I got saved, I knew, things started changing so rapidly. My lifestyle started to change, and there were things that I was cutting out of my life because Jesus was making it apparent to me that I obviously needed to know that needed to be gone. The faithfulness and those sorts of things that she had no idea was going on. Yeah. Was obvious and blatant to me, but it was something that I couldn't stop, on my own. And so when that happened, in our relationship, at that point, we both decided, you know what, we're just gonna go after Jesus. We just both want that, for our lives. If it brings us back together, then great. But, so that brought us to have some really tough conversations. And I think that's just God has been so faithful in that at the start of our new relationship of me really praying to him, saying, God, I love this girl. I want to marry this girl. Help me. If there's something that I need to do before we get to that point, before I propose to her, put it right in front of my face where I can't deny it. And so those conversations just start coming up left and right, completely unprepared. It was like we were just driving home one night from Oregon. We were driving back down the coast after an alumni game, and she just starts asking me these questions. And I finally, for the first time in my life, got to that point where I couldn't lie to her anymore. And so it's just question after question. I'm being honest and answering, and that really shook us, obviously, the truth behind what was really going on in a relationship. But through that, it's brought us a lot closer together. And also, as far as getting discipled, that's another part of my life where God has been so faithful, because I didn't grow up a Christian, didn't have one Christian friend in San Diego. That's where I live in the off season. A lot of my friends are still running around doing the things I was doing in high school. So I had nobody at home, and so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed for God to put people in my life, and He was so faithful in that, more than possibly anything I've ever prayed for. To the point where I'm just such great friends with my pastor now. He's an older pastor. He's got a new guy coming in to revitalize the church that's going to take over. Two of my best friends that have just been incredible and really helping me grow up and mature in my faith. And he's just put groups of people and Bible studies and all these different people in my life to really pour into me and help me grow. I even remember my first year of pro ball, Daniel Murphy's little brother mentioning this to me, and I wasn't really listening. I texted him last offseason, "Hey man, what was that thing you were telling me about?" So we get word of that and we sign up and we come here, and it was just the greatest experience for us. So many incredible conversations and so much growth happened within 4 days here at PAO that it was just crystal clear to me after that it was a no doubt time to get the ring, and that we were going to be together forever.
We're talking to Janie and Jake Reed together. Not Janie Takeda anymore. Jake Reed and Janie Reed. And it's right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Janie, a member, let's go on the field a little bit. And it's such a great story to hear you guys together now. And I loved your journey together. But there also is that sports journey together. And you're a member of Team USA and the softball team. I remember this past summer, 2017, turning on ESPN, and there was the World Cup of softball, and my daughter loves softball. And I said, "I know that girl who's hitting out there, Janie." And she goes, "No way, Dad." So tell us about the journey and where you are right now. I know Olympics could be possible. 2020, softball's returning. What's kind of going through the process of playing softball right now, and maybe a goal towards the Olympics sometime?
Yeah, my first summer with USA was after my senior year, 2015. So I've played 3 summers with USA, and you have to try out every year. Mm-hmm. So I have tryouts coming up first week of January, and everybody, it's not really one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, they have a tryout, but everybody knows who's going to make the team. It's like all of us are kind of like, we don't know, which is crazy because you kind of plan your whole life around this thing, and you could not be playing next summer. But I think USA has been great. Just the community that I've gotten to meet and spend time with the best softball players in the world on the field, but also we started a Bible study 2 summers ago, and that has been absolutely incredible. We baptized some girls last year when we were in the Dominican.
That's great.
Our group has grown from 3 to 8 or 10 sometimes, and there's only 20 girls on the team. So it's so clear that God is really moving on the team. And me and Jake have talked about, I would love to be there. In 2020, I would love to have that platform. You have that platform for 4 years until the next Olympics. So it's huge for the kingdom, but also all the girls that are on the team and the way God's moving in collegiate softball as well. As long as there are girls on the team giving God the glory for the gold medal that we're going to win in 2020, I'm good. But obviously, He's put me here, and you ask friends of mine that I grew up with, they wouldn't have guessed that I would be on the USA team today. I wasn't that player. Yeah. So it's kind of obvious to me that God has really wanted me to use this platform for Him. So I'm going to keep working as hard as I can. And when He decides that it's my time, it's my time. But I'm kind of at peace with whatever He decides.
That's cool. Jake, you've just finished your 3rd year of professional ball, AA, AAA this past season, 2017, with the Twins. How is the outlook going? I mean, you're one step away from the big leagues. 2018 could be that year. How's sort of off-season training going for you? We're taping this late November.
Training's been great. Just working hard. It's been tough the last couple of weeks with the wedding and this week being gone, but once we get back home and moved into our place, we'll be right back at it. But Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a Twin. There's a lot of exciting things going on, new front office, and going from the worst team in the big leagues to playoff team the next year was awesome to watch. There are a lot of friends and buddies on the team that got to be a part of that. So it's great, man. You just I'm really motivated this offseason to work hard and hopefully be a part of that at some point. So,
what about the patience factor of going through the sort of baseball journey that it is? You're like, all right, come on, I feel like I'm good enough, I should be in the big leagues, and just being patient while also being persistent in your training and trying to do the best you can where you are.
Yeah, it's hard, and I think anybody who says it's not isn't telling the truth. It's difficult, where especially when you're pitching well and you think that maybe there's a shot that somebody goes down or there's a double header or something, that you got a shot to be up there the next day. So I think just the fallen human that I am, it is tough, but at the same time I'm just doing my best to just stay in the moment and realize that I am where I am for a reason, and that the worst thing that I could do is be bitter or salty about being in the minor leagues when I got friends going up to the big leagues and this and that. So it's been a lot of fun. I've made a lot of great friends, and I'm still playing baseball. I'm 25 years old, so I really can't complain.
It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's close with this. So usually we ask the question of sort of what is the Lord teaching you, but for you guys, I'm curious about what verse or something, a Bible verse that you're clinging to, something in God's Word that is speaking to you right now that you cling to. So is there a Bible verse for you, Janie, that you're just like, that's it for me, this is where I just need this right now from the Lord?
Well, I kind of have a life verse. I'd say that maybe God is speaking in what I'm reading right now, which we're doing like the 1-year Bible plan.
Mm-hmm.
Can't say I'm exactly on track with that, but yeah, I've been reading a lot of awesome stuff and doing some Bible studies. But like this verse has kind of stuck with me through the years, ever since that one day that was kind of brought to my knees, which I randomly opened. I know they say don't randomly open to a page in the Bible, but like this is real.
Yeah.
It's 1 Peter 2:9. And it says, "But you're a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his possession, so that you may proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." And I like it because each time I read it, I get something different based on what's going on in my life. And I think just lately I've been really wanting to find like true significance in solely Jesus, which is so hard when you're an athlete and you have all these things going on. It's like, how do I know that I would truly feel the same value if all these things were just stripped down?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's great because I love sharing it with people and I love what it does for me, but it tells people that you're valued simply because Jesus chose you, and for no other reason besides that.
It's awesome. Jake, how about you?
For me, I read this last season, probably maybe halfway through, and it just hit me because it really kind of gave me purpose in that time of frustration where there was nothing happening and I felt like I was pitching well. But it's in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, starting in verse 3. Paul says, "We live in such a way that no one will stumble because of us, and no one will find fault with our ministry. In everything we do, we show that we are true ministers of God." And so for me, it really made me just think of where I am and why I'm there. And it really hit me in the smallest and most delicate situations as far as my witness for Christ, that people, see me reading this, people know that I'm a Christian now. And Paul says we live in such a way that no one will stumble because of us. And so, whether it's a conversation in the bullpen or whether it's a moment in the clubhouse with somebody, or whether it's, even out at a bar with the teammates, always being conscious that I'm not just representing myself, but I'm representing Christ, and that I don't want to be the reason that someone says that's not real, or that's not supernatural, that Jesus doesn't have the power to truly change somebody's life. And so I've really kind of hung tightly to that verse and to that idea of like just there's no situation or no moment too small in the game, any conversation or any relationship.
That's awesome. He is Jake Reed, Minnesota Twins pitcher. She is Janie Reed, USA softball player. Together they are now Mr. and Mrs. Reed, and they're married, and life is good. So we wish you guys nothing but the best, both in your professional endeavors and certainly as husband and wife. Thank you for being a part of the Sports Spectrum podcast. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And we do appreciate Jake Reed, Minnesota Twins pitcher, and his lovely wife, Janie Reed, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. You can follow along with them on Twitter. Jake is at JakeyReed5, Jakey Reed, REED 5. And Janie is at JTakeda19, the letter J, TAKEDA 19 on Twitter. Give them a follow. Let them know that you heard the podcast. Let them know what you think. Big things planned for these two. I'm excited to watch their journey unfold and watch Jake make his trek to the major leagues and watch Janie continue to do some amazing things on the field with Team USA softball, but also off the field. The impact that she's making in a lot of young ladies' lives is really cool to watch as well. So check them out, follow them on Twitter, and we appreciate them joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We appreciate you joining us as well. You can email us, jason@sportspectrum.com, if you have any guest ideas or any feedback on this podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at @sports_spectrum. The same, we're also there on Instagram and Facebook as well. And go leave a review on iTunes. That's another great way to kind of let the people know about the podcast, is leaving a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, that you heard this episode. And also, if you feel led, take a screenshot and let people know about this podcast. Let them know that you liked it. Let them know that it exists. Share it on your Facebook page, your Twitter page, your Instagram page. Tell the world about Jesus through Sports Spectrum. That's what we're here to do. That's what our goal is, to bring the stories of sports and faith, to make the name of Jesus known to everyone. So we appreciate you checking us out and joining us here on the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum.